This is Danish-InfoNews TV, your Danish English news updates. In today's late August news update, we see school children giving kisses and blowjobs for illegal puff bars for same sex, to an incest case, and violence against daycare children. Welcome to this edition of Danish-InfoNews TV. We begin on Tuesday, August 26. An educator gets punishment for hitting daycare child's head. This came as a confession on Tuesday in a court in Holbæk that she hit a child in the head in a daycare. The case resulted in a sentence of 30 days suspended imprisonment, according to the Mid- and West Sjællands Police, writes Ritzau. The incident took place in September 2024 in a daycare in Høge in Odense. This took place when the child was 1.5-years-old, when the educator gave the child a blow to the head with the flat of his hand. In a different case, 49-year-old sentenced to prison after entrenching himself with children. On Tuesday, a 49-year-old man was sentenced to 1 year and 6 months in prison for violence, threats, deprivation of liberty, and violation of the Knife Act. This is what Copenhagen police prosecutors wrote on X. The incident happened back in May, where the man barricaded himself in for just over a day with his 6 children and ex-wife. In another case of neglect, 52-year-old must pay 40,000 krona for neglecting cows. A 52-year-old man from Otterup on Fyn must pay a fine of 40,000 krona for violating the Animal Welfare Act, the court in Odense decided on Tuesday. According to TV2 Fyn, the condition of the cattle was so poor that several had to be euthanized. In addition, the authorities found a rotting cow during a visit. Now to Wednesday, August 27. In a bank case, former employee took money from customers' accounts. The court in Esbjerg on Wednesday sentenced a former bank employee to 1 year and 9 months in prison without parole in a case of forgery, data fraud, and fraud of a particularly serious nature. The South and Southern Jutland police wrote in a press release. In this case, the 39-year-old man used his position to obtain money for himself from customers' bank accounts. According to Jysk Vestkysten, he was employed at Skjern Bank. And now to the story of school children giving sexual favors for illegal puff bars. Young people in Køge municipality are selling themselves in search of nicotine products such as illegal puff bars. This is reported by Sjællandske Nyheder based on information from the municipality's health consultant, Charlotte Birre. These are children as young as 5th to 6th graders who pay for the nicotine products with everything from kisses to sexual service, such as blowjobs. This trend is confirmed by the Central and West Zealand police. In another crime, men get long prison sentence and deportation for knife attack on kiosk employee. In this case, 2 young men aged 19 and 25 were sentenced to prison terms on Tuesday by the court in Aarhus for serious assault. In January, against kiosk employee in Viby, a 26-year-old man was stabbed several times with a knife and machete and was subsequently hospitalized in critical condition. The 19-year-old was sentenced to 6 years in prison and deportation for attempted manslaughter, while the 25-year-old was convicted of aggravated assault and received a prison sentence of 2 years and 3 months. In a different case, man sent to prison strangled his girlfriend. In this case, a 42-year-old man has been sentenced to a total of 4 months in prison by the court in Glostrup for repeatedly subjecting his then-girlfriend to violence. This is according to prosecution at Vestegns police. According to the court, he puts her life in danger. In a different case, sent 2.4 million text messages in 5 months, charged with gross fraud. A 41-year-old Dane has been sentenced to 6 years in prison by the court in Frederiksberg for so-called smishing and 42 cases of gross data fraud. The massive messages were sent from June to October 2024, in which he pretended to be an official. in order to get access to her card information, writes the prosecution in the Copenhagen police on X. In an accident case, man dies in traffic accident. A 76-year-old man died on Tuesday as a result of traffic accident in Svendborg. The police believe that he felt unwell and drove recklessly. The man was taken to Odense University Hospital by the ambulance, but he died. Now to Thursday, August 28. Woman convicted of 2 false rape reports. A woman appeared at the Central and West Zealand police in Colombo on 2 separate occasions and said that an acquaintance had raped her. According to TV2 Øst, this turned out to be pure fabrication. The court in Holbæk has convicted the woman of 2 cases of false reporting and assessed this at 40 days in prison and a compensation of 15,000 krona to the man. The woman pleads not guilty and is considering appealing the verdict. In a different case, woman hospitalized after threats with a knife in Horsens. A mentally vulnerable woman has today been deprived of her liberty in Horsens after threats with a knife. This case is reported by the Southeast Jutland police on X. The woman has subsequently been hospitalized in a psychiatric ward. In another case of rape, 37-year-old convicted of rape of a 16-year-old. In this case, a 37-year-old Patrick Liljeqvist Sørensen was sentenced to 3 years and 9 months in prison on Thursday for an assault rape committed against a 16-year-old girl in December last year. This is reported by Southeast Jutland police. At the time, he threatened the girl with a knife to get into his car in Vejle. The girl was subsequently raped both in the car and outside at a playground in Vejle. In a different case, 35-year-old convicted of pushing 18-year-old onto the tracks. A 35-year-old man from Copenhagen has been sentenced to 1 year in prison after he pushed an 18-year-old man onto the tracks at Nørreport station in June early morning of 22nd while a train was approaching the platform. The man was convicted of endangering the life of the 18-year-old and of violence. In a different case, spouse sentenced for $1 million fraud. A 46-year-old woman from Ola has just been sentenced to 9 months in prison for being in possession of 1 million krona, which originated from an offense. Reports National Unit for Special Crime. The woman's spouse was sentenced to 11 years in prison in 2023 for trafficking 30 kilos of cocaine. In another case, woman charged with drunk driving on electric scooter. A 57-year-old woman on an electric scooter was charged with drunk driving on Wednesday when she hit a 68-year-old woman on a cargo bike. This took place on Strandpromenaden in Helsingør. This was reported from Nordsjællands Døgnrapport. The 57-year-old woman was under the influence of alcohol, and she was driving at approximately 25 kilometers per hour on the opposite side of the road. She was also charged with failing to comply with her duty to give way. In a different case, 21-year-old extradited to Denmark. In this case, a 21-year-old Danish citizen who is charged with 3 attempted murders and bombing was extradited from Morocco to Denmark on Wednesday evening and will be brought before a judge on Thursday morning. This was reported by Copenhagen police on social media X. The man is also suspected of recruiting and instructing people, including children, to commit crimes against persons in Denmark. In another tragic accident, man dies in track accident. A man died on Thursday after a serious traffic accident on Odensevej between Assens and Odense. This was reported by Funen police to Ritzau. This accident is a result of a collision of a passenger car and a truck. The deceased was the driver of the passenger car, and the truck driver was slightly injured. Now to Friday, August 29. In the Ensest case, 59-year-old charged with assaulting his 2 daughters. A 59-year-old man will be presented in a constitutional hearing in Rana's court on Friday, where he is charged with having committed multiple sexual assaults against his 2 daughters. This was reported by the East Jutland police to Ritzau. The daughters, who are now adults, reported the father to the police on Tuesday for the assaults that allegedly took place when they were children. In another case, 34-year-old man seriously injured after shooting. The 34-year-old man who was hit by multiple shots in Høje Gladsaxe on Thursday evening is seriously injured, reported on a press release by Copenhagen West Region Police. In another case, a 45-year-old sentenced to prison for threatening boys to hand over bottle receipt. When a pair of brothers aged 8 and 10 were pawning bottles at a supermarket in Riskeu in March, they were contacted by a 45-year-old who threatened them with violence over the bottle receipt. The boys handed over the receipt of just over 50 kronas and they rushed home and told their parents. The man was arrested and charged with robbery and is sentenced to 9 months in prison without parole. In a press release, the East Jutland police stated that the man, who is a Somali citizen, has been deported from Denmark with a 6-year entry ban. According to the prosecution, the fact that the crime affected minors was an aggravated factor, and both video surveillance and the boys' credible statements contributed to the verdict. The man pleads not guilty and is considering appealing the case. In a different crime, taxi driver sentenced for child rape. The court in Aarhus has sentenced a 40-year-old taxi driver to 1 year and a half in prison for raping a 13-year-old girl. He has appealed the verdict, according to TV2 Østjylland. In another case, 43-year-old man deported for rape and violence. A 43-year-old man was sentenced to 2 years and 6 months in prison for rape and violence by the court in Helsingør on Friday, according to the North Zealand police on the social media X. He was also deported from Denmark with 6 years entry ban. The 43-year-old has appealed the case and is being held in custody until the case is decided in the High Court. In another crime, 21-year-old man found guilty of attempted manslaughter. A 21-year-old man from Aarhus municipality was convicted of attempted manslaughter by the court in Svendborg on Friday. This was reported by Fynn police on the social media X. The man was sentenced to 6 years in prison but appealed the sentence on the spot. This was all for today. Thanks for watching and stay informed.